Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the channel, frequent co-conspirator, James from the Oasis Podcast. How are you doing?
Morning, mate. I'm very good. Thank you very much.
So this time the tables are turned a little bit. This time it's me interviewing you. Ever since Oasis split back in 2009, anytime I've been asked about a reunion, I've always said, I hope so. But to be honest, I kind of doubt it. The last week or so, however, has been the first time since then that I've kind of looked at the situation, looked at what, Noel and Liam are actually saying, and for the very first time, really, in all that time gone, do you know what? It maybe could happen.
Yes. Yeah. How many times have we gone through this before? Over the years, I've been doing the podcast coming up 6 years. And it's like every time that Noel's got a new product to sell, he does the round of interviews. And obviously the question will always come up. And it varies between, probably the lowest point was a few years ago when he went on front row, and it was just after there'd been Liam had done some pretty mean stuff about his children. And that was just like, it's never happening. It's over. You do not talk about my family in that way. If there was ever any chance, it's done. The big thing that's happened recently, and it was a funny kind of a sequence of events. We had this announcement that this previous Tuesday, Noel would be doing a round of interviews and there would be new stuff. Now, we didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but we assumed new single and album announcement, which is standard. Then on the Friday night going into Saturday morning, we heard that there was going to be a big exclusive in The Sun the next morning, or The Scum, as I call it. Noel Gallagher and his wife, Sarah, are going to be divorced. Now, I'm thinking, well, hold on. He's got all these interviews due for the Tuesday, right? Well, how's he going to do those interviews now? Because surely they're not going to want to talk about new single. They're going to be talking about you're getting divorced. But I actually found out, having spoken to a couple of people, those interviews happened on the Friday in the day. And so he went to London, he did the rounds, he did all his interviews on Friday, the Absolutes and the Radio X and stuff. So hence when they come out on the Tuesday, you're thinking, well, where's all the divorce chat? He was on the front of the newspaper on Saturday.
A few people have actually made the comment that this was obviously a timed announcement. This has obviously been quite carefully choreographed. So he's done those interviews. He's then shot it up into the headlines by a few days later announcing the divorce, because they chose the timing of that. It was private. They chose the day specifically to release that information. So interest shoots through the roof and people track down these new interviews. And what they indirectly get is promo for the new stuff.
When it was announced, we're sort of going, oh, The Sun, they're such scumbags. And I'm literally sat there on Twitter ready to do my tirade against The Sun and this showbiz editor who was sort of gloating about on Twitter about having secured this great new scoop of the year, right? And I'm thinking, you scumbag, think about the children. There's no one thinking of the children. And then I thought exactly that. I thought, oh, let's take a step back a minute here. We know that Noel has a very good relationship with The Sun. He's very good pals with Gordon Smart, who is the ex-showbiz editor of The Sun. And actually, whenever Noel does anything, it tends to be positive in The Sun. And when he does bad things, like when he was very rude about disabled people at Glastonbury last year, didn't make an indentation in The Sun. Whereas when Liam says stuff, it's attacked. So he's on good terms with The Sun. And I think that is a pretty horrible and cynical thing to do, to announce your divorce deliberately to then get more promotion for your single. But I would not put it past Noel at all, because
right.
Because we've known in the past that he is more than happy to play the game. Like the last time he was on the front pages of the newspaper, it was sort of, once again, he was promoting, and it was the Prince Harry is a woke snowflake comments that got on the front of the newspaper. and it tends to be, it's, at first I thought, no, there's no way he would do that. But then you think, well, hold on a minute. He's a very, very astute businessman who can be ruthless and can use the press to his advantage. So I wouldn't put it past him.
A big thing that kind of turned my head, though, was the new single. Now, when I heard Pretty Boy, I'll be honest, I was like, there's only 5 notes in the melody of this. This is just more of what we've had, which is just effectively a groove-based song with very little in the way of melody and a shitload of auto-tune. So I listened to it and I was like, love Noel, but that's probably not really for me. And then the next one comes out. This new single I was really impressed. And he's come out and said, I've started writing on acoustic guitar again. He's singing, the album's called Council Skies. He's trying to get back to his roots. And I just thought that was really interesting. I wonder if there's an element of him, if in the big master plan, there is a plan for a reunion. If there is, I wonder if he is bridging the gap back to it.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting point. Because Noel going straight from Who Built the Moon and we're throwing away the old rule book. That's a really interesting point because it would have been a bit jarring to go straight from that to that. You could say like in both the relationship terms and also in musical terms, he appears to be tiptoeing back into that world.
Let's look at Liam and Noel. Let's look at their relationship. The last massive kickoff was Liam going public, slamming Noel for not allowing him to use Oasis songs in the Nebworth doc, in the new Nebworth doc, which I kind of get. He doesn't want to be directly competing with the same songs, the same material that's in Noel's Oasis Nebworth doc. So I get that. Mm-hmm. But that was the last big fallout where Liam was slamming Noel and calling him like poisonous dwarf or something like that. And
it sounds like him, yeah.
Something fairly like ruthlessly brutal like that. And then everything went quiet. Now, we've got Glastonbury. That seems to have been the time at which, according to the papers, everything came to a head between Noel and Sarah. Do we know anything about what happened?
No. I mean, to be honest, I don't tend to follow the personal stuff that much. I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people will read into things like, Noel wasn't wearing a wedding ring and things like that, or Noel's been going to movie premieres with his daughter rather than his wife and things that you think, okay, well, I mean, that's two pretty obvious indications, like not being seen out with someone and also not wearing your wedding ring. That's pretty major, I suppose.
Following that fallout over the Nebworth doc, there has been behind the scenes, Noel and Sarah break up. They released the information on Noel's schedule, but I wonder if that's the reason everything fell completely quiet between Noel and Liam. And then just sort of bit by bit, for the first time in years, they've both made these oddly positive noises about each other. Noel and Sarah are now getting divorced. She and Liam really, really hated each other. And, that is widely reported by Liam also to be the reason that Oasis split. Now, that interview on BBC Radio Manchester with Noel a few days ago, where he said he and Liam are now getting along great, was the first time pretty much ever since the band has split that he said that in an interview. But he said it in a tone of voice, I think intentionally, so you couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic or not.
Definitely sarcastic. I'd say it's definitely sarcastic, because the way that the I can't remember it exactly here. I'm sure you'll be dropping a clip in here.
Got to get the elephant out of the room. How are you and your kid getting on these days?
Oh, brilliantly, yeah.
Genuinely,
yeah. He's taken a year out apparently to find himself.
Will do you think if he and you find brotherly peace along the way, would there ever be a time when you'd play together going forward in any sort of a way?
Well, one should never say never. It would have to take an extraordinary set of circumstances, but that's not to say that those circumstances wouldn't ever come about.
I sort of get the impression he's taken aback. Like, well, wow, how should I know? I've not spoken to him for 15 years, you know what I mean? So that would be my sort of thinking. Like if someone said to me, how's Tony Blair getting on? I'd be like, yeah, great. I don't know. I've never met the guy. I mean, it could be that they have been in touch in the background. You never know if this has been going on for a few months now and there's been discussions and contact. The big issue in the past has always been that Liam and Sarah never got along. And then Liam said some pretty brutal things about Sarah. He called her a witch continually on Twitter. And he wrote Greedy Soul about her from the big track from his first album and performed it numerous times, and would like even change lyrics in the song to be even more pointedly about her and things like that. So Whereas that's out of his set now. I mean, it was an album track from the first album, so it would make sense for it to drop out of the set at some point. There's not many songs left from that first album in the set. I don't know, mate. Why are you asking me these questions?
Because I think I'm quite good at the historical documentary stuff. I think you're pretty good at the absolute up-to-the-minute gossip. I'm terrible with that stuff. Like, honestly, I get most of it from your tweets and a couple of other guys' tweets because I don't know what the fuck's going on. So I'll go on Twitter and go, oh, right, bang, 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 bang. Thanks, James. And then, you know what I mean? So if anyone knows, I didn't know that Greedy Soul was about Sarah.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. He'd be saying, literally within the space of a couple of tweets, one of them he's saying, oh, yeah, come on, come on, Noel, let's get the band back together, give the people what they want. And then someone would say, oh, what about Sarah? She's a witch or whatever. And you think,
oh, mate, shut up.
That's not going to work, is it? It's like, if I don't know if you've got brothers and sisters, but it's like if you wanted to get back into business with your sibling, don't go and slag off their partner in front of 3.5 million people on Twitter. It's just not the way to do it. But that's the fun and joys of following Liam Gallagher.
But it just stood out to me, that comment that Noel made and the comment that Liam made right after. Liam put out a tweet saying that Noel had called him begging for forgiveness. Yeah, everyone can see that happening. But what did you think about that? Was that just sheer bollocks?
Of course, yeah. I just had our kid on the phone begging for forgiveness. Bless him. Wants to meet up. What do you reckon? Meet up or fuck him off?
It's comedy gold, like.
It's brilliant. I love this so much. This is my favourite. I love it. My response was the sort of the David Brent Office gif where he goes like that. To me, that is obviously a Mickey take. But I also liked his next tweet, which is from at Cuntological, said, couldn't you wait with this tweet for a few hours? I'm in the cinema going to watch Avatar for 3+ hours. You have the worst timing. And Liam said, I've heard it's wank. Oh my god!
Yeah, quality.
Oh, so you get film journalism as well as Oasis reunion rumors. 90% of me says that's just he's seen what's going on. He's heard what Noel said. He's seen like thousands of things pinging at him, and he does follow this stuff. He does follow this stuff over the years. Like he's replied to tweets like where someone hasn't even tagged him. They've just put Liam Gallagher or Noel Gallagher, and so you can tell he's not just someone that checks his mentions. I think he's always got his finger on what's going on.
His PR guys will be permanently on it, even if he's not. I mean, that's the reality. Yeah. Combing through YouTube comments, combing through tweets, that's part of their job.
Yeah. There is, I'd say, probably a 10% chance that, yes, there has been discussions, there's stuff going on in the background, and he's sort of, putting the little feelers out or getting the temperature for it.
I get the vibe that your feeling really is that this is another red herring and that it's not really going to happen. I personally feel a little bit more optimistic than you. I think there's some good signs there personally, but I get the alternative view. If it was to happen, if it was to come together, what do you reckon the band setup would be?
Right, good question. So let's talk through the options, shall we? Let's start with Noel and Liam Gallagher. If it isn't Noel or Liam, it's not Oasis. If Liam said, no, you know what, I'm going to tour as Oasis, then it wouldn't work. Same with Noel. If Noel said, I'm going to tour as Oasis, it wouldn't work. Whoever legally has the right or doesn't have the right to do that, no, you need those first two components. So obvious point, but one that I think is important to make. Do you concur?
I concur.
Good. All right. So then next up we say, okay, so let's go with the drummer. So let's go through our options because Oasis have had more drummers than Spinal Tap. Tony McCarroll, he would do it. He would do it in a heartbeat, as in emotionally he would do it. He's fallen out with Noel over the years. Is he physically capable of doing it? Well, he did have a heart attack a couple of years ago. He could only play the first album stuff though, because he's a brilliant drummer for what he does, but he couldn't do a lot of the other stuff that other drummers did. So, yes, feasibly he could do it. Relationship wise, would he do it? Noel probably wouldn't want to work with him again.
It feels like there's been some burned bridges there.
Definitely. Well, when someone sues, it's like, and it's not just like he sued them, but also they've all been very rude about him in the in the past, and he did his book where he was quite rude about people. So then you go to Alan White. Well, Alan White, we always said he's out, definitely not. But then actually a couple of years ago, he reappeared on Instagram. You know, in lockdown, he was doing like drumming videos, like drumming to Oasis songs. And you thought, well, hold on a minute. What does this mean? Does this mean he's back in the fold and he's reclaiming that love for Oasis? He could play anything because he's a brilliant technical drummer.
It's difficult though, isn't it? Because based on what I've heard from some people behind the scenes, he actively blocked as much as he could of his footage in a lot of the latest documentaries. He kind of just said, I'm out. I want nothing to do with this. So, I mean, that's not a promising sign for Alan, for me.
Following that was why we were so taken aback when he turned up on Instagram, drumming along to Oasis songs and making quite positive comments. I said, I'm not interested in the personal stuff, but I've seen Gem's wedding photos and, so at Gem's wedding, Noel's there, Andy Bell's there, but no sign of Alan White, so you kind of get the impression, okay, well, this is, he's not in that world now of mates. So whether he would come back and do it, I get the impression he probably would. And then after him, we go Zach Starkey. And Zach, he's drummer for hire. He tends to be more interested in his he's got a reggae record label now. And that appears to be his sort of main focus. He's mainly focused on that. He's also got a band, SSHH, with a female singer. And he still drums with The Who as well. So if he got the call, yeah, he'd come in and do it, I'm sure, as a drummer for hire. And I don't know relationship-wise if there's any issues. I don't believe so. But the one I think is most likely would be Chris Sharrock.
Yeah.
So Chris Sharrock, for people that don't know, was the drummer for the last Oasis tour after Zach left. And then he drummed for BDI. But then after BDI split, he then went over to Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. I'd put my money on Chris Sharrock.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my feeling was Starkey or Sharrock, realistically, as well. If we got Alan White, that would be incredible, but it does feel a bit unlikely.
Bass player. Okay, so they only had two bass players, which is Gwigsy and Andy Bell. We know Andy's still mates with Gem, and he was at the wedding with Noel, so I believe he is still mates with Noel. Obviously, Andy is just having an amazing resurgence with his own solo material and with Ride. Ride are touring with the Charlatans in America this year. Andy Bell, over and above anything, is an Oasis fan. And when I interviewed him, name drop, he didn't want to talk about the years when he was with Oasis. He wanted to talk about the years before he joined Oasis and how excited he was and how he first heard their demos when, he was with Primal Scream in America. So he is a fan first and foremost. So I could imagine if it was like a one-off live pay-per-view event at Nebworth, Andy, can you come in and do some tunes? I'm sure he'd say, yes, please, but if it fitted in. But if it was then going to be, right, it's a 2-year tour, he's not going to do that is that going to fit in with Ride and with everything else? And then the Gwigs thing, from talking to Mary, which I've really enjoyed the interview, by the way. It's really good stuff. She's brilliant, isn't she?
She's a really good laugh. She's nice, yeah.
She's fantastic. What did, Chris in his book said this. That's bollocks. Just fantastic. I loved it. Gwigsy, would he do it? No, he doesn't need to. He's not interested. He's very happy at home, living his life, doing his gardening, listening to his reggae.
Fans would really be kind of put out on some level if they didn't get Bonehead, because Liam and Noel are Oasis, but really, for most people's money, it's actually Liam, Noel, and Bonehead are the real heart of Oasis. And Bonehead's been playing with Liam, so I could kind of visualize Bonehead going, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. But then that means who would be on bass? And my thought would be potentially Gem. Now, Gem's a really accomplished guitarist. He's still playing with Noel, but he's such a chill guy. He's such a kind of amenable, nice fella. He might do what Bonehead did when they played, I think it was Letterman, and go on to bass, because he's been playing with Noel for years. He knows all the material inside and out. When Noel stepped down from a tour, after, I think it was in the year 2000, Gem just stepped up and played all his parts.
He could do it. He's physically able to do it. We know that the Oasis bass lines aren't the most complicated bass lines in the world. I think it's more likely that if it wasn't going to be, if it was going to be a longer engagement, and so Andy Bell wasn't an option, I would say it'd be Russ Pritchard from Noel's current band. And then I would say in terms of guitars, you would just have Bonehead and Gem. Because at the moment, Bonehead's like, it was funny with Liam's band, he started out as like, he would just come on like almost like a cameo appearance just for the Oasis songs. Then he would bugger off for the Liam solo songs. Whereas now he's just pretty much there the whole time. Except for obviously he had cancer last year and he was out of it for a while. And as I said, I don't think it's going to happen. But if someone said, right, if it happens, what's the lineup? I'm saying Chris Sharrock on drums, Russ Pritchard on bass, Bonehead and Gem on guitars, and then Noel and Liam. Basically, it's the Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, really, but you're adding Liam and Bonehead to the lineup. And you've got Mike Rowe coming in. Hey, keep bloody Charlotte on the scissors. Add some scissors to Supersonic. Super scissors, why not? Liam is effectively taking a year off, is what our understanding is. And that's actually something that Noel said in his little interview there, was Liam apparently has taken a year off to find himself. I was waiting for Noel to sort of say, well, just look in the mirror, you twat, or something. But then he didn't say that, actually. So that I thought was interesting. But then if it was going to happen, well, it's not going to happen this year because Noel has got the album coming out in June. He's got summer shows coming up this summer. I imagine he'll be doing an arena tour in the autumn, winter. That's normally kind of how it works. Nothing's been announced, but that would typically be the way when you've got an album to promote. And then he'll probably go and do stuff around the world next year. That's normally what happens. I just think it's a bit tricky with the timing. Because it would have to tie in with how they both work within their sort of album cycles effectively.
And it's the 30th anniversary of Definitely Maybe next year.
Well, there's always everything. There's always an anniversary of everything, isn't it? Maybe Nebworth next August, then that would probably work, wouldn't it?
Said with the defeated tone of someone who's been disappointed too many times before.
It ain't happening, mate. It ain't happening. But it's looking, what I'll give you though to finish this off is it's looking slightly less unlikely to happen than it was a week ago.
Fair play. So James, tell us a little bit about the Oasis podcast for anyone who hasn't checked it out yet.
I would just say, if people aren't aware, then, the Oasis podcast is still going. It is the ultimate audio guide to Oasis, while James is becoming the ultimate video guide to Oasis.
And one thing I would add on that is that the Oasis pod on many things goes far, far deeper than I do on a lot of my docs. A lot of the Oasis pod articles have been fantastic actual resources for me researching. Another massive thing that the Oasis pod does is keeps right up to date in what's happening in the Oasis world. Quite often, a bit of news comes out and then it's right there on the podcast on the next episode, which is awesome. Yeah.
Your stuff does tend to be primarily scripted, and I've done the odd scripted thing in the past, but it's not really my forte. And I think that the level of research you go into and what you do behind the videos and the level of work you do is really good. Whereas what I tend to do is just like, it's the raw data. So, for instance, I did an interview with Paul Bardsley, who grew up in Burnage and was good friends with Noel and was in the first ever band with Noel, Fancy Chicken and the Amateurs. Because I'd heard of him and he'd been mentioned in the books and things. Oh, yeah, that Noel's first band was Fancy Chicken and the Amateurs. But when you're trying to do that full breakdown, like you did the Rain stuff on the interview with Mary, well, if we go back a step, well, what was Noel's first project? And then we know that there's these Noel demos kicking around from the late 80s. Like Hey You and these sort of other songs that are out there on YouTube. And then it's like a big jump to he's with the Inspirals and whatever. But there's just these like little mentions are out there of, well, hold on, well, what was Fantasy Chicken and the Amateurs? What the hell was this? But there is an interview there for like an hour with this guy sort of breaking it all down. And it's just a good example of kind of the different styles, I suppose. It works well.
Yeah, I always have kind of viewed what I'm doing and what you guys are doing at the Oasis pod as very much complementary. If you haven't checked out the Oasis podcast yet, go give them a listen. And James, I'm sure I'll be talking to you again soon.
And I'll see you down the front in Nebworth for the reunion.
Rock and roll.
Cheers, mate.